How's everyone doing? It's Judge Dawson, and as you know, I do a program called Finish First. It's part of my Cycle Breakers program, where my goal is to make sure that we are equipped to break cycles, negative cycles in our lives. Now, of course, there are some cycles that are just the cycle of life, right? And there are some cycles that exist because they are beneficial to us. But we all know that there are some things in our lives that we need to clean up a little bit, right? We need to change, we need to adjust. So what I do through my programs is we talk about ways to avoid negative interaction with the legal system, ways to tap into your greatest self, ways to reach that pinnacle where you're trying to go. So it's all related to being a cycle breaker. And if you haven't seen my program before, let's start with the principles of being a cycle breaker. Number one, cycle breakers recognize the need for change. Recognizing the need for change. That means you know that there's something in your life that's just not right. Maybe it's a goal that you want to accomplish. Maybe it's a relationship that you need to end. Or maybe it's something that's nagging you that you need to do, something as simple as getting your license renewed. But we all know that when there's something that you should do, but you don't do it, we are creating space for negativity. When there's something that you should do that you don't do, we are creating space for negativity. So, as cycle breakers, we have to recognize the need for change. Number two, once you recognize the need for change, now we have to commit to doing it. There are so many times in our lives that we know that we should do something, but we just don't do it. Or we know there's a change that we need to make, but we just don't go that extra mile to change. Cycle breakers commit to making the change because we know that without commitment, you won't do it. So if it's something that you've been putting off or something that means a lot to you, then it also deserves your commitment. So number two, committing to making the change. Number three is just as important, maybe one of the most important ones. Well, I'm not going to say that because all four of our pillars are important. Number three is where you really get down and into it. You have to get the tools to be able to break the cycle. I mean, it's from anything as small as, let's say you want to stop smoking. You need to know, what are the steps that I need to take in order to stop smoking, to be successful at it? Or maybe it's a position that you want, or you want to run for office. There are tools and techniques. There are steps to getting to where you want to go. It doesn't matter what it is you want to accomplish, but we often fail to tap into the resources because we don't want to ask anyone, or we don't want to invest financially, physically, or mentally in learning, and not only learning, but mastering those tools. So number three, being a cycle breaker requires you, it's mandatory that you get the tools necessary to break the cycle. And then number four is just as important because number four is when it gets really tough because people, things, and circumstances are going to tempt you and pull you toward quitting. But cycle breakers don't quit. Cycle breakers know that what I'm trying to accomplish is so important to me that I'm going to stick in there no matter what happens. It doesn't matter if I don't feel good on that particular day. I'm going to go and do what I said I was going to do, whether it's working out or not having a cigarette or going to school, finishing the homework. When you want to accomplish a goal, you have to stick with it. No matter how many times you're getting calls about going out and kicking it and having fun, what we know is that in order to reach that level of success that I know that you're destined for, you have to not only commit, not only get the tools, not only identify what's important, but have the grit and the willpower to stay in there when the going gets tough. Those are the elements of a cycle breaker. All right, cycle breakers, today we're going to talk about something that we could really go on and on about. It's a theory that I've come up with, and then it's been reinforced through my yoga practice and now as a yoga teacher. But it's talking about a tree. And in yoga, we often talk about the 8 limbs of yoga, and I will get into that maybe this session, maybe a few after it. But today, I just want to focus in on the tree. And what's interesting, whether it's yoga that you practice or that you study, Buddhism, or even Christianity, There are scriptures and verses that deal with the tree and how powerful the tree is and how certain trees produce certain fruit. So it's funny because it's a philosophy that spans whatever it is you believe, because the facts are the facts. And we can tie our meaning into it. We can tie our own religious or our own spiritual connection to these different theories, but the theories are the same. They're principles that exist. So we're talking about a tree. So think about it, whether it's a tree that's in your neighborhood, a tree that's in your backyard. Have you ever noticed, first of all, that a tree grows really from a seed? Like, can you believe that? That these massive trees that we have around us, the trees that are in our neighborhoods, the trees that provide shade, the trees that fall down on our houses, they start from little seeds. I mean, you can see in my background, I'm basically surrounded by trees where I live. And it's really mind-boggling to believe that something so big, something so strong and massive started with a little seed. And that just shows you the power of intention and your seeds. See, what's in you and how you were designed is going to manifest itself, and it doesn't matter how small it starts. It doesn't matter how many times you get a setback. You were designed with a specific intention. You were designed to be great, just like a tree. And that cannot be stopped unless a few things occur. So we're talking about the fact that a tree comes from a seed. That seed has to be planted, right? But that's where things can go wrong. See, if the seed is not planted in its proper environment, then it won't grow to be a tree. It won't grow at all in some circumstances. And even worse, in other areas, it can be dug out and destroyed by predators, animals, squirrels, what have you. So I want you to start thinking about your life in the same way that you think of a tree. Think of it in the sense of how powerful you can become, the impact that you can have, whether you're providing shade or you're providing the wood for houses to be built, or you're providing a fire for someone to get warm and get well. The bottom line is that inside of each and every one of you, there is a seed that will have great impact if we just believe in it, and we have to cultivate it in a certain way. So we're talking about this seed, right, that becomes a tree. You have to plant it in the ground. So it has to be grounded, right? So when you think of the word grounded, we're talking about the roots have to be connected. They have to start to connect to the earth, and that way it can grow up. And that's an interesting thought. The tree goes down into the earth before it goes up to the sky. The same thing applies to you and I. See, oftentimes we are in these environments where we can't get quite grounded. And it may not be your fault. It could be that your family background wasn't that great. I mean, think about it. None of us have perfect families. None of us. We think we see people with perfect families, but everybody has family mess. So maybe the environment that you were born in wasn't that great. So you didn't have a chance to get rooted. Or maybe you were sent to various foster homes and things like that, or adoption, or the family broke up. There was a divorce, a massive divorce, and the family split. It could be anything, but it caused you to not get rooted. And keep in mind, when there's no connection to the ground, when there's no rootedness or connectedness, that can slow down the process of the tree growing. But I'm going to tell you something about being rooted. The good news is, if you ever notice something about seeds, sometimes they blow around. So sometimes they get moved from place to place. Sometimes an adoption takes a seed somewhere else. A foster family takes a seed somewhere else. A divorce takes the seed somewhere else. But it doesn't change the fact that it is a seed and it has that greatness in its DNA. So even when it moves to another place, and it's not even at its own will, it's blown somewhere by a storm, because we all have storms. I hope you get this. I hope you're following me. Even if you're blown somewhere because of the storm that was going on in your life, the DNA that's inside of you, the design that God has for you doesn't change. You're just in a new location, and you have to get rooted in that new location. So after you get rooted, the next thing is that you have to cultivate the seed. You have to do certain things to make sure the seed is growing. That is making sure that the environment is ripe for production. You know, I had a plant, well, I had many plants because I'm not that much of a green thumb, that used to just never survive. And I couldn't figure out why. But the answer was right in front of my face. It was that I did not know how to cultivate the plant. I didn't have the tools. I didn't water it enough. I didn't fertilize it enough. I didn't feed it correctly. So I didn't have the tools and the plant didn't succeed. That's the same thing that's happening with us and the seeds that we have in us. We need to make sure that the people we are around are the right tools, the right environment, the right food for our seeds to grow. Because if we're wasting time with people who are destroying our ego, destroying our mindset, talking down to us, not believing in us, not giving you the nutrients that you need as far as love and support, and even sometimes just plainly keeping it real, telling you those hard things that you need to hear that no one else will tell you, you won't develop into your greatest potential. So in order for the seed inside of you to grow to the level that it needs to grow to, the environment has to be correct. The ground, you have to be rooted. And then not only does the environment have to be correct, we have to be patient. Let me talk about patience. Because what happens is, and if you have any spiritual belief, you know, I believe in Jesus. I'm a Jesus follower, so that's where I come from. But I can speak to it from a regular standpoint, right? But we all know that there are dark times in our lives, period. I mean, I can't imagine anyone who's gone through life and hasn't experienced the dark days when they felt depressed or sad or disconnected from everyone. But see, what we learn through spiritual development is that oftentimes in the dark times, that's when we grow, right? There's something for us to learn and to gain from those dark days. But what does it require? It requires patience, and you have to surrender to that moment. So what I mean by patience is that you have to make your way through the dark days because it won't always be dark. The land will shift. Sun will come out. A new day will present itself and you will rise again. So first of all, be patient, knowing that you can make it through these difficult times. And then the second one, surrendering. Oh, that's so important because we don't want to surrender when we want to hold on to our position, our place, our idea of what's perfect, our idea of what we want life to be. So we don't want to surrender. But I suggest to you that sometimes surrendering to the moment, and I talked about it before, taking that short-term loss, knowing that there's a strategy for a long-term gain. I've said it before, I think it's a great example. You're playing basketball, you watch LeBron James, he's going down the court, 5 people surround him. What does he do? He has to surrender to the moment and pass the ball. That moment, it was not for him to shoot the ball. He couldn't make the shot. He knows it. The statistics are low. So he has to pass it. Now some people say, well, why don't you just go for it? Just heave it up. But instead, when we learn about development and success and the give and take, there is a time to surrender. And that's what he does. And that's what great people, great players, leaders, that's what we do when we're faced with a controversy. Sometimes we have to surrender for the moment, thinking about the long-term gain. So again, we're going back to our seed, the seed that's in the ground. You have to surrender to the fact that right now it is dark. I'm not even sure I can make it out of this. I know I wanted to be a lawyer when I grow up. I know I want to be a teacher, or I wanted to be an entrepreneur or an artist, but I don't even see the opportunity where I live. I don't see the opportunity in my environment. So what I suggest to you is that those dark days are times for us to grow and for us to develop so that you can become what you are intended to be. So remember, in those dark days, you have to be patient because it won't always be dark. Plan though. You want to plan to get out of it, and we'll talk about that a little later. But also, you have to be willing to surrender. So we're going back to our seeds. We talked about patience. We're talking about planning, right? Because you cannot grow a tree or a garden or anything worth having without the plan going forward. So I talk about the fact that I was never able to have my plants live successfully. Well, the question is, did I plan it out? Did I go and Google how to raise a, Persian, whatever it is that I like so much? Did I Google that? Did I then go to the garden store with all the tools and find it with my little list and find out everything that I needed? So if I didn't properly plan, then it's going to be difficult for me to help that seed grow. And the same thing applies to your life. We have to properly plan our win and our development and how we break the cycles. So I suggest to you, when you're in those dark days, because again, there will be dark times, we have to be patient. But while you're being patient, plan how you're going to come out of it, and then just surrender, knowing that you're ready, that you've done enough, and that it's your moment. So again, our subject, we're talking about the seeds. Now, the last thing I want to mention, because the next conversation we're going to talk about the tree as it begins to grow. But we have to start at the beginning, right? We have to start with the seed that's planted. We talk about the fact that if a seed is the seed of an oak tree, it will not turn into an apple tree. If the seed is a seed of a, orange tree, whatever, it's going to be what it is designed to be. See, oftentimes we want to be things that are not within our realm or what we're not designed for, not the intention of our Creator. And you're going to always have difficulties when that's what you're trying to do. Now, we can go way off with that one because that applies to your relationships, your friendships, the people you hang with, the jobs that you pursue, the businesses that you start. If it's not within the design, the DNA, or the intention that's set for your life, it's going to be more of a struggle. And don't get me wrong, in today's time, we can struggle through anything. We've learned how to struggle through anything, but I'm talking about thriving and not struggling. That's when you walk within your purpose. And my friends, I'm telling you right now that inside of you, there is DNA with amazing purpose. You are built and made to be awesome. But it's all about taking the time and using your opportunity in every inch of your body to develop yourself into that tree, into that massive, beautiful, useful tree that you are designed to be. So, as we conclude this session, we're going to be talking about the growth of a tree and how to expand and be useful and be the absolute best you can be. But we start with the simple fact that it all begins with a seed. So I ask you, think about the seeds that you've been planting in your life, in your relationships, in your mind. How do you talk to yourself? How do you talk when you're hanging with your friends? Every other word, is it something negative, something nasty, something, a curse word? I mean, we use them as fun, and that's cool because, we have an expansive vocabulary. But what about, taking a poll, taking a track to see what's the majority of my conversation like? What's the majority of my thoughts? How are my thoughts affecting my life? Because when I speak a certain way, I think a certain way, I will have a certain outcome. So take stock. Figure out where you are and how you're developing your seed, because I'm telling you, your seed will produce certain fruit because we have willpower. So it's either going to produce the fruit that we were intended to bloom, or it's going to produce something nasty and something weird that was never intended for us, but we forced it anyway because of our habits. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's enough for today. That's a lot to digest for today. You're listening to our Cycle Breaker Talks. I get pretty deep, but these things are things that will not only take us to the next level, but things that will take us on a mind journey that will develop us mentally, spiritually, and physically so that we can help change the world. So I'll leave you with that. I'll talk to you soon. It's Judge Dawson. Take care.